Guys, and welcome to week 14 for our lesson. Now, this will be a very brief and short lecture about functions. Just a recap of how we could actually use the function as well as the basic concepts of error catching. How do we capture errors so that our program will run even if there is an error that was encountered? Now, we can use functions to further improve the previous sample codes that we had in the earlier lectures. Example, if you will recall, we made a bato-bato pick program wherein 3 bits 2, 2 bits 1, and 1 bits 3. Okay? It uses a while loop as well as the random and time library. And it repeats until the player has no more lives. Initially, the lives is set to 3. And then each and every time that the player is defeated by the computer, one life is taken away. Okay. Now, just to review, in this particular code, in this particular program, okay, let me run the program. So first, the computer selects a random number. After it has selected a number, you will choose a number which is 1, 2, 3. Just make sure you pick any number from 1 to 3. Cannot be any greater or lesser than that particular number. So let's see, 2. Okay. If there is a tie, meaning to say the computer and you both selected that number, it will display that you are tied. Okay. In the event that the comparison has finished or checking of both values from you and the computer has finished, the computer will once again repeat the loop and select a random number from 1 to 3, and then it will ask you again to choose a number, again, tie. Okay. If, for example, you win, okay, it will display if you have won. Now, if in case, okay, we won again. If in case the computer wins, it tells you that the computer has won, and then it will repeat the process until your life is 0. Okay. Once your life reaches 0, it will display the string game over, and then the program exits. Going back to the program, so what we did is to set our variable lives to 3, and then while lives greater than 0, okay, we repeat the entire loop. So we repeat the entire code, and then at the end of the loop, we print game over. Okay. Going back to the code, I use time.sleep in order for us to have a pause. Okay. If I will remove this time.sleep, which is from the library import time, if I remove this, we will not have a delay in the execution of the program. So the program will just run until it asks for a number. So in order for us to have a delay so that it looks like that the computer is selecting a number, we use time.sleep. But this is optional. If you want to remove this one, the program will still work. Okay. Now using random.runInt or random integer, we selected numbers from 1 to 3, wherein the computer will select any numbers from 1 to 3. Okay. Once that is done, the program will now ask us using input for a particular number. Notice I use the method or function int here in order for us to convert our input to integer. be reminded that the default data type for input is string. That's why we need to convert this one. Otherwise, we cannot compare it to the variable comp. Okay, it will produce an error. Using if else, if both you and the computer has the same number, we print type. But if not, okay, first we check on for the computer side. If the computer side's value is 1, okay, we'll check if your value is 3. If your value is 3, it means that you lost. Otherwise, it means that you win. Okay? If the computer has a value which is not equal to 1, here, it will check if you selected 1. You selected 1 and the computer's value is 3, you win against the computer. So take note, in order for us to display a formatted string, we make use of %d to denote that we are displaying an integer. For displaying a string, we use %s, and for float, %f. In this format, again, just a review, once you use percentage in your string, in order for you to display the variable, you need to place it outside of the quote, either a single quote or a double quote. You need to place the percentage, and then inside the open and close parentheses, you need to place the variables that you want to display in your string. So in this case, we have 1, 2. So we need to place 2 variables, okay? Because we want to display 2 particular value. Okay, if you are 1 and the computer is not equal to 3, means the computer won. Okay, if your value is not 1 and the computer's value is not 1, if your value is greater than the computer, you win. Otherwise, you lose. Okay, so that is how simple this particular program is. Okay. Functions are usually used to reuse repeating lines of code so that programmers do not need to repeat the same set of lines in their program. We can think of a function as a utility that can be called upon whenever it is needed without having to repeat the codes again. To make our code more readable, we can move some parts of our previous code to a function, such as the computer input and the user input. We can then call them in our main code as a function. So this is just a basic example of how we could use function. So what I did is to place the display that the computer is selecting and that the user is picking a number as well as the sleep and then the random integer into 2 functions. The first one is for the computer input. The function name is computer select. Take note, I did not place any parameters here. So it's just a basic function without any parameters or any variables. Okay, I place here the display computer select as well as the sleep. And then take note, whenever you use function, functions always return a value. Always remember that. There are times that function can return a null or nothing value, meaning to say we just want to execute a code. But in this example, we want to return the random number that was selected using our random function, as well as in the user select or user input, we want to return the input from the user. Where did we use it? We use it to place a value to our variable. So notice computer select returns the value and gives it to comp, and user select returns the value and gives it to you. So instead of writing this particular code, we have separated it into 2 lines. And then we could use these functions if ever you want to add another use for them in other parts of our program. Also take note, whenever you are creating function, if you are doing multiple function, meaning more than one, it is better if you put a comment at the top or at the bottom of your function so that you know where is the beginning and the end as well as the function of your function. If you want, you could also do a doc, okay, of your particular function. It's up to you on how you will use it. But primarily, most functions are found at the top of your code before the main program. So this is basically the same program. I just use a function in order for me to separate the computer input as well as the user input. Okay. So when we run the program, okay, wait, computer input. Okay, sorry. There was okay, comment here. It's a comment, meaning what part checks for the computer input and what parts check for the user input. For one, when we run the code, it's the same. Another example that we have is an example for a store management program wherein users display an item or sell items. The function used here is used to display the name and price of the items stored in a dictionary. So for this example, I made use of a dictionary in order for me to store the key, which will be the item name, and the value, which will be the price. Okay. So I have here two variables. One is con or continue, which is a blank string. And then dic items, which is a blank dictionary. And then I added two items, A and B, together with the price. Now, this is my function here. Function display items, which accepts variable dict, which is a dictionary. And then it will display, we have the following items in our store. Using a for loop, what I did was to get the key in our variable, which in this case, our dictionary, and then display using %s, the value of the key, as well as the value of the dictionary. So using the ICT bracket key. Okay, so it will get the value of our key, okay, and then display the value of each dictionary. Okay. This is the main part of our program. While cont is not equal to 4, it will display. So it will display this particular string. Take note, I use a triple quote in order for me to type this string without the need for a return line or a next line, \n. What I did is triple quote, then type in the string, and then triple quote. So it will display this particular string as it is on our screen. Next, after displaying after setting the value for a string, I will display it, and then I will ask for the input from the user, and then pass it to variable con, okay, using if, elif, and then else. If the option is 1, I will display the items using our function. If the value is 2, I will add a new item in our dictionary. So first we enter the name and then the price. Take note, again, because the data type for input is string, I will convert it to float and then put it in a variable item price. And then what I did was to call the name of our dictionary, set the key as the item name, and then set the value as the price. And then I call the function again, display item, so that you can see if this particular item has been added successfully. If the option is 3, it means you want to buy something. You need to type the name of the item. And then what happens is that using our dictionary, I will display the name of the item and the price or the word. And then we ask for the quantity, we ask for the payment. And then I will display the change. If the option is 4, what happens is that it will display thank you and come again, as well as exit the loop in the program. If you press any other option aside from that, it will display no such option. So let us try to run the program. Let's say, for example, I type E, such option. I want to view the item. So we have the following items in our store. I want to add, let's say, C. Then the price is 50. Okay. We now have 3 items. I want to add another one, say Coke. Then the price is 25. We now have 4 items. And then I want to buy an item. Let's say I want to buy Pepsi. Pepsi is worth 50. Quantity is 2. Okay. Interpayment 100. Okay, your change is 0. So I want to exit the program. Thank you. Come again. So the program exits. This is a basic store management system, if you will, without using an actual database, just a dictionary. Okay. Okay. But what happens here, guys, if, for example, okay, I want to buy an item, then the item name is S, so it doesn't exist. So it throws an error, our program exits. What if I buy a valid item, which is A, and then quantity is string, it exits. So notice, if I entered a wrong data for either the item or the price, the program exits. What can we do in order to avoid such problem and make the program still run while telling the user that we encountered the problem, a problem? We can make use of what we call error handling. So how do we handle errors that we encounter in our program? Python has error handling functionalities through the use of try, except, and finally blocks. So the try block lets you test a block of code for errors. Except lets you handle the error. Finally, lets you execute code regardless of the result of the try and except blocks. When an error occurs, or exceptions as we call it, Python will normally stop and generate an error message. Using try, these exceptions can be handled using the following statement. So try, print X, except, print, an exception occurred. So what happens here is that, let me show you. For example, you just do this code. There's an error. X is not defined, meaning to say there is no variable X that has a value or initialized. So what we want to do is use try and then except print error. So instead of the program exiting and then showing the error, it will, whenever we are encountering an error, what we can do is to place our code that we want to execute inside the try block. So do not forget the indentation, just like what we do with the if and the while loop or the for loop. Okay, do not forget to indent. Place the code that you want to execute inside try, and then place except colon, and then place the message that you want to display whenever an error is encountered. So in this instance, we want to print X and then display error whenever there is an error. Okay. So notice that our program finished successfully without the error being displayed. Now, if you want to avoid that error, what you could do is to, of course, set a value to X. So whenever there's an error, this except block will be executed. But if there is no error, all the code inside our try block will be executed properly. That is how you could use the try except block. So you could just use the try except block as it is, or you could also make use of finally. Okay. The block, if specified, will be executed regardless if the try block raises an error or not. Meaning to say, whatever happens in our try except code, our finally block will always be executed. Okay. So even if there's an error, it will get executed. Even if there's no error, it will get executed. Okay. So for example, I want to print the error message using except. Finally will always be executed. How about if there's no error? Finally will still be executed. That is the use of finally. It will always get executed even if there's an error or not. So in most cases, try except will work, okay, without having to use finally. So I modified our code to include this error message. Now, what I did was to add another function called create items. What I did was to place the name, the dictionary, the name or our key, as well as the value inside the function. So I declared our function above our, I declared our variable dic items, our dictionary items above our function. So make sure to do that. Otherwise, this will have an error. Okay, so we are creating the dictionary item using functions here. So I move that there. And then notice for option 2 and option 3, what I did was to place try. Okay, try create items. If there's an error, it will display the error. And then finally, okay, successfully added item. Actually, you should always, yes, print the there's an error. So what we'll do is place this in our create items. Okay. Then finally, we display the newly added item. Okay. For number 3, okay, we place our try block. here. And then we catch for the error. And then lastly, if we use an option 4, we'll say thank you, come again. And then if we have the wrong option, we'll say that there's no such option. Again, notice for option 2, we use finally. So it will always display the items. And then for option 3, we just use try and accept. So we run the program, do the items, add item. For example, like domain, item types, error occurred, try again, please check all data, and then we'll display the items. So trying to add ed, price is 25. Okay, so it's now added successfully. How about if we buy item? So item name is, for example, blue. Error occurred, try again. Please check all data. So buy again, 900, 25, 22, 13,500. The change is 450. So we want to exit. Okay. So that is how you would use function as well as how to capture or handle errors that you encounter in your program. So thank you. And hopefully you can do the samples that were included in our lecture for this week.